Today, we're diving deep into the health of some of Nepal's most critical ecosystems, its wetlands. They're facing this silent crisis, and what we're going to do here is break down what's wrong, why it's happening, and most importantly, what the path to recovery could look like. Okay, let's get into it. So, in Nepal, wetlands have this really powerful name, Prakriti Komrigala, which literally means nature's kidneys. And it is the perfect analogy, isn't it? I mean, just like our own kidneys filter waste, wetlands are out there purifying water, controlling floods, and keeping countless forms of life going. They're basically the nation's natural filtration system. And we're not talking about some small, insignificant system here. Wetlands cover a full 5% of Nepal's total land area. To put that in perspective for you, that is a huge chunk of the country. From the highest peaks of the Himalayas all the way down to the southern plains, these ecosystems are just a massive, essential part of the landscape. So, for our first section, let's get a really clear picture of why these kidneys are so incredibly valuable. What exactly are they doing for the country and for the planet? Well, ecologists tend to group their benefits into these four main pillars. First up, you've got the provisioning services. That's the direct stuff we get from them, right? Food, medicine, fresh water. Then there are the regulatory services. These are like nature's invisible hand, controlling floods, purifying water, all the background work. Third, we have the cultural services, the things that enrich our lives, like recreation, tourism, even spiritual connections. And finally, you have the supporting services, which is the absolute foundation for everything else, like nutrient cycling, that makes all the other benefits even possible. And the sheer scale of who depends on these wetlands, it's just staggering. I mean, think about this. 1 out of every 10 indigenous people in Nepal has their entire livelihood and culture directly tied to these waters. These places are the last refuge for a quarter of the nation's threatened bird species. And if we zoom out, the global picture is even more dramatic. 40% of all species on Earth and 1 billion people worldwide need wetlands to survive. The stakes just couldn't be higher. And that really brings us to the heart of the problem. Despite their incredible importance, every single one of Nepal's 10 wetlands designated as Ramsar sites, and that's a label for sites of international importance, every single one is facing serious threats. Their health is failing. So let's take a quick tour of a few of these sites to see the damage for ourselves. We'll start way up in the Himalayas at the iconic Rara Lake. People call it the Queen of Lakes for its stunning beauty and crystal clear water. It's Nepal's largest and deepest lake. But even here, in this seemingly perfect place, trouble is brewing. Yep, even in this incredibly remote, beautiful spot, the pressures are building. Land around the lake is slowly being encroached on, and as more people come, pollution is on the rise, threatening those pristine waters. Okay, next stop on our tour is another Himalayan gem. This is Phoksundu Lake. It's a sacred site for both Buddhists and followers of the Bon religion, famous for its mesmerizing turquoise water and its incredible depth. But here, the threats are a bit different, though just as damaging. The report points to things like pollution from open defecation and manure runoff from livestock as the key sources that are contaminating this sacred body of water. All right, now we're heading south, way down from the mountains, to the plains, to the Koshi Tapu Wildlife Reserve. This is a totally different kind of wetland, the huge expanse of marshes and mudflats, and it's an absolutely critical pit stop for migratory birds, a real biodiversity hotspot. And Koshi Tapu is facing what you could call a perfect storm of problems. You've got overgrazing, you've got agricultural runoff, you've got these choking invasive species, and then you have overextraction of resources like fish. It's all happening at once, and it really shows you how complex and overlapping these challenges are. And look, if you want just a single number that sums up this whole crisis, here it is. A scientific study gave the Jagdishpur Reservoir, another one of these Ramsar sites, a management effectiveness score of just 0.27 out of 1. To give you some context, anything over 0.66 is considered good. This score, this isn't just a failing grade, it points to a state of almost total neglect. So we've seen some specific examples on the ground. Now let's pull back a bit and look at the main categories of threats, the primary diseases, if you will, that are making all of Nepal's wetlands so sick. This list really brings together the problems we just saw. You've got overexploitation, invasive species, pollution, encroachment, but layered on top of all that are two more huge threats: the massive, overarching impact of climate change, and this scientific process that's quietly choking the life out of these waters, a process called eutrophication. So what in the world is eutrophication? Well, think of it like this. It's what happens when you overload a lake or a pond with nutrients, usually from things like farm runoff or sewage. This flood of food causes a massive explosion of algae and plants. But then, all that stuff dies, it sinks, it decomposes, and that process just sucks all the oxygen out of the water. It effectively suffocates the lake and kills the fish. And this is a huge problem in the Tri and the Mid-Hills.
Which leads us to a really critical question. If experts and even government reports can so clearly diagnose the diseases, why hasn't there been an effective cure? Why are these vital ecosystems still failing?
This slide tells the story so powerfully. So Nepal's official strategy from 2018 to 2024 had this brilliant idea. Create simple, color-coded health report cards for each Ramsar site. Blue for excellent, green for good, yellow for fair, and red for poor. A great plan. The reality? Not a single one of these report cards has ever been published. It's a complete and total failure of implementation. So why did it fail? Well, we don't have to guess. In a 2018 report to the International Ramsar Secretariat, Nepal itself laid out 5 major hurdles: a lack of money, a shortage of skilled people, no real management structure, an inability to even analyze data, and, get this, no centralized database for its 10 most important wetland sites. These aren't just small hiccups, these are deep systemic problems. Okay, so after that pretty grim diagnosis of the institutional failures, let's turn to our final section. Let's talk about solutions. What is the prescription for recovery? What's the path forward?
The path forward, it turns out, is pretty clear and actionable. First, update the policies so they actually match Nepal's new federal system. That way, everyone knows who's responsible for what. Second, activate the Wetland Conservation Fund that exists on paper but isn't actually working. Third, make decisions based on science. Invest in the research. And finally, build the monitoring systems that were never created in the first place so those health report cards can finally be made.
And that brings us right back to where we started, to our final thought. We began with this powerful idea of wetlands as nature's kidneys. So the question we're left with is a pretty sobering one. If the filtration system in a body fails, the whole body gets poisoned. So what happens to the health of an entire nation when its natural kidneys begin to shut down?